Hi, welcome. Today I thought we'd take a look at the Kenimex Scorpion. Now, this particular Nelson-based clone was manufactured in England in around 1990, and it was really a high-quality paintball marker of its era. Not many of them were sold into Australia. I think I was the only person to import them, and only about 8 or 10 of them came into the country. And I'm not sure if any of them made it to the United States. Now, this is almost the complete kit. You had the choice of either the skeleton grip, which I've put wooden grip panels on, or you had this Lone Star sort of like grip. Now, the finish on the gun, it would either come as just aluminium with no finish on it, or what they called a chromate finish on the barrel and the receiver. It's not an anodizing. It has flaked off a little bit in places over the years. And it was quite a nice finish. It was sort of like a dark grey reflective finish, sort of like a high gloss, similar to a grey anodized, but a different process, I believe. Now, the marker also came with this barrel plug with the Scorpion logo on it, a 12-gram changer, so you could remove the constant air from the back here. This bottom line fitting is also something that I made back in the 1990s. I've also put this neoprene cover over the pump handle because the pump handle was quite abrasive to the hands unless you were wearing gloves. The kit also came with a shorter barrel, which I've got around here somewhere, but I can't find it at the moment, so we'll just have to imagine the short barrel just came to about there from memory. This particular barrel actually has sort of a suppressor-like device on the end of it. I'll show you what's inside that a little bit later. First things first, we'll just clean up the desktop and get rid of these accessories. So this is a breech drop gun. Sorry, not a breech drop, a bore drop gun, I should say, in that the paintball drops into the bore diameter. Nelson guns came in two types traditionally, in that some dropped into a breech, so you had to push the paintball up a little ridge from the breech into the bore. In this, the actual breech has been reduced down to the bore size, but to eliminate double feeding, they put a little dish in the bottom of the breech anyway, so you're still pushing the paintball up a little hill, but just not as far as you would in a breech drop gun. Now, to disassemble this, similar to any other Nelson, we'll take the barrel out first, remove the pump handle, that to one side. Now I'll remove the quick strip screws. So there's the internals. We've got our bolt, and as you can see, being a bore drop, the bolt is actually longer than some other Nelsons which are breech drop, which would typically finish somewhere back here. This actually has a bronze hammer, so it's quite a heavy hammer. Now I'll just remove the power tube assembly. The power tube is not really standard Nelson. It's slightly different in size to a Phantom in particular, so the power tubes are not really interchangeable if I get the right spanner. The main reason the power tube is a bit longer, of course, is because of the longer bolt. The power tube has to travel further into the bolt area. So there's the cup seal. The cup seals are pretty standard. That one seems to be stuck, so I won't take that off. Some of the earlier power tubes, the way they were machined, they had a tendency to break here. This is typical of Nelson pump guns because that area there gets a lot of stress, particularly if you auto trigger the gun. and shoot a lot of rounds. That's actually the power tube spring. So that's the internals. Nothing super special, everything is just really nicely made, as I said. Now, the other little wrinkle in the Kenimex Scorpion was that there was an autoloader kit available that would drop straight into the receiver. I happen to have one of those here. This is the autoloader kit, and it's pretty much a clone of an auto mag. There's the on-off pin, the bolt assembly, which is stuck. The regulator actually is in the side here. The only other thing you had to change was that there was a trigger that came with it, so you actually had to change that trigger in. That trigger effectively sat like that, so it held the bolt in place, so when you release the bolt it pushed the on-off valve pin in, just like an automag, but without the complexity of the sear. The automag has an extra fitting on here which goes down to the trigger, whereas this actually has the trigger as part of the sear mechanism. Similar to the way the Badger does it, actually. In some respects the Badger is actually closer to this than it is to the automag. Now, there were some problems with the autoloader kit. There was no anti-double feed mechanism. It just relied on that little dish in the breech here to stop multiple feeding of paintballs. It was also fairly brutal on paint, like some of the early automags. Now, I have a autoloader kit here because you could also buy it just as an autoloader. So if I assemble that, you can just see what it looks like as a complete marker. Just put that strip screw back in. If it wants to go back in. So that's the autoloader assembled. So the other gun would look like this if we replaced the trigger sear and inserted this in the back. Now you'll notice that there's an angle on the bottle fitting here. This was really just to keep liquid out of the gun because of course these markers were produced back in the day when CO2 was the only power source available to you. So that's an actual autoloader version of the Scorpion. Of course, you could assemble this gun with the 12 grams, so you just assemble the power tube into this, and this would go in the back of the gun, and you'd have a 12 gram capable gun. I'll just reassemble that back into its original configuration. Actually, I probably want to insert the hammer first, that way I can line up the pump arm, which isn't quite lined up yet. There we go. Just put that on there. Hold that in place while we drop the spring in. Hammer, power tube assembly, another thing I should point out is that the threads into the upper body have been helicoiled, so they're actually quite durable and are less likely to strip than some other clones that didn't have helicoiled threads into the aluminium. Oh, I've got the wrong one, haven't I? There we go. a bit hard to do this and keep it in the camera view at the same time. Okay, put that one in. Now the barrel. I don't have the short barrel here, it's somewhere around, but I can't find it at the moment. But I'll just let you have a look inside. So there's the barrel. When the marker came, it actually had a little bit of sound deadening material around here. It was really like a plastic scourer pad. Not particularly abrasive, but it was really like a scourer pad that was wrapped around the barrel and cut to size. And these two big O-rings just hold this on. It certainly does provide a certain amount of sound moderation, takes a bit of the bark out of the gun. You know, it's one of the unique features of these was this barrel. Overall, this is a really high quality paintball marker, in my opinion, and certainly one of the best quality Nelson based clones that I came across back in the early 90s. And the people I sold them to were very happy with them. Oop, got that round the wrong way. Hang on, let me just get that over there. That's better. Again, it's difficult to do this and show it on camera at the same time. Oh. There we go. And there it is, fully assembled again. Like all Nelson clones from this era, when you were shooting these markers, you had a tendency to have to keep tightening up the thumb quick strip screws and the pump screws, because if you didn't, they did have a tendency to come loose and pop out on the field, particularly if you run it in auto trigger mode. A lot of pump guns of this era, you could hold back the trigger and just pump them rapidly. Accuracy wasn't so good, but you could actually get out a reasonable volume of fire, which meant that these guns could sort of hold their own against the early semi-autos, which didn't really have a high rate of fire. The only disadvantage of the auto triggering was that the velocity was down a little bit because the hammer was released a little bit, not as far back as when you actually cocked it and then fired it. It actually released a little bit earlier, so velocity did drop off a little bit when using it in auto trigger mode. So that's the Kenimex Scorpion. You know, it's one of my all-time favourite Nelson-based paintball guns from the era. And as I said, made in England, and certainly a really nice pump-action marker to use today. Though, of course, you will find that the stock barrels are fairly big bores, so you will have problems with paint rollout with modern paint. And being a proprietary thread, like a lot of markers in that era, you can't update the barrel unless you want to get a barrel specially threaded to suit. I don't use this particular marker that much these days. I do take it down occasionally for a shot on the firing range and to let other people sort of have a bit of experience with some of these early markers, which is why I guess it's still in pretty good nick. It hasn't really been thrashed in tournaments or on the field. Anyway, that's about it from me on the Kenimex Scorpion and the Kenimex autoloader. I could probably do another video at some stage on the internals of the autoloader, but if you've seen how an automag operates, it's pretty much the same. It's just really been simplified a little bit. So that's it from me, and I'll catch you next time.